Hey guys, Chris at the Ultimate Recycler. Today we're going to do another scrap out video. Now this is one though that you probably won't see very often. It's a vintage Mighty Max photocopier. It came from a shop that closed down here that had been going for a long time, and it looks like they purchased it second hand. So it's not something you're going to find very often, but I'm curious to see what's in it. And we'll go through our normal process of valuations. I'll get a weight on it first, and the thing is massively heavy for the size of it. It's really, I don't know what's in it. Maybe they put concrete in the bottom, or the chassis is made out of lead. I don't know. It's very heavy, much heavier than I expected. Anyway, we'll pull it apart. We'll see what makes it so heavy. We'll see if we can get any scrap value out of it. But first of all, I'll try and stand it up on the bathroom scales here, and we'll get a weight and just see what it would be worth if we took it to the scrapyard as dirty shred. So I've managed to stand it on its end, and as usual we have to read the scales upside down, but that's just a whisker over 30 kilograms. Now 30 kgs is a lot for something that's really not much bigger than your average vacuum cleaner, maybe a little bit wider. So 30 kilos. Let's write that down here, dirty shred. Now, as usual, the first option for value is to sell the thing if it's worthwhile. This one isn't worthwhile as far as a copier goes, and it's filthy dirty. It's had oil drip over the top of it or something. I don't know. It's almost like tar, so I'm not sure what that is. It's been in a shed for a long time. So there's a liberal coating of dust there. So it's no value as a photocopier. Collectible wise, look, it's probably old enough to be collectible, but I don't know anyone that collects vintage office equipment. The thing's bulky, it's heavy. Yeah, look, if I kept it another 50 years, it may have a collectible value, but I'm not fortunate to have that much storage room. So I'm basically saying let's scrap it. I don't think there's enormous value in trying to resell it for whatever use complete. So dirty shred, 30 kilos. We're going to work on 10 cents, even though it's a bit better than that at the moment. It's just a figure that I'm going to work on regularly. You can adjust the price whenever you happen to watch this video, because you know the weight. So 10 cents a kilo, that's $3. So barely worth lifting into your ute or trailer, but we'll see if we can improve on that. Well, for a start, we can chop the cord off, and then we'll pull it apart and just see what actually is inside. Alright, let's start by removing the cord. It's a good, thick, heavy cord. We'll take the plug off while we're going. And we'll just take some of these covers off, and we'll have a closer look once we can see better. Okay, 15 minutes in, we've got the covers off. It looks like it's going to be fairly time consuming, but there's lots of nice hardware, chains, sprockets, springs. It'll take a while to get apart, but yeah, I like that sort of stuff. You know, I can sell it in my shop. Electronic wise, there's not going to be much. Probably power supply under there, something like that. I've got the top carrier off and just took that apart. Only took me a little while. Some really good thick chunks of extruded aluminium, and all these are just steel rails that the carriage used to slide back and forward on. I think they're all steel. Yep, looks like they are. We're going to generate a bit of rubbish with the plastic casings and that top piece that was kind of a rubber. A little bit of aluminium there, some steel brackets. So we're not really into the bulk of the machine yet. On this side we have a large switch assembly and a light globe. It's a bit more simple. That one looks like a solenoid. So we're going to get a bit of handy stuff as far as hardware goes. The sheet of glass from off the top might be useful for something. There was some magnetic latches which I always put aside, and yeah, we're going to get some good hardware. So alright, we'll keep going. We'll I think this end might lift up. There we go. Oh, there's the big lens. There's an electric motor, some more chains and sprockets. So I'm not sure what made it so heavy. Mind you, everything is fairly thick gauge metal, and there's very little plastic other than the two halves that just sort of were decorative more than anything. Alright, we'll try and get some more bulk off it, and I'll take a lot of this hardware off this side. I'll keep a track of my time, but I suspect that there's not going to be much more scrap value. We're probably going to get better value as far as I'm concerned out of hardware bits and pieces. But you know, you got to pull them apart and have a look, don't you? So half an hour in, and it's been frantic unscrewing and unclipping and pulling all the little C-clips off these cogs. And whilst I'm doing this, I'm reminded of the large commercial printer copier that I scrapped a while back. I'll put the link up now. It turned out to be a real marathon, and I'm pretty sure I told you guys to remind me never to do another copier again. Not that it was, you know, that bad value-wise, but it's very tedious. But then again, I may not have said it, I might have just dreamt it perhaps. So in the comments, remind me never to do a copier again. However, in saying that, this one's actually not too bad, as in it all comes apart pretty easily. There's some really cool chains and sprockets, and just have a look at the ones I've been putting in a tub here. Now these are all steel with little grub screws. Some of them are on a keyway, and yeah, they're much nicer. The last copier had a lot of plastic ones, but these are all really good, and I reckon someone that does a bit of dabbling, or hobbyist or an inventor, that's got a keyway in it. And I've kept some of the mounting things for these. So, and even some of the shafts I'll keep. So I reckon as a hardware lot in the shop, there's going to be some pretty good value there. If you went to a bearing place to buy little sprockets like this, and they're all steel, you know, they're not plastic, I think there's a bit of value there. Now this motor's pretty cool as well. It's a 240 volt motor. I'm assuming it works. It should, I would think. But it's also got reduction gearing, and it drives a little chain. Probably one of these chains, I think, looking at the sprocket. So a little 240 volt motor with reduction gearing. Again, someone that's inventing something would probably find that very handy. So I think there's a bit of value in those. I'm getting a few micro switches, some connector blocks, a lot more hardware. I've been concentrating on this side that had a lot of stuff on it, so I think I'm actually over halfway, even though the bulk of the thing's still sitting there. Lots of little bits of steel. There wasn't much else in the way of rubbish or anything, so yeah, just pulling all these little bits off. There's going to be a good selection of springs, which I sell separately. There will be a bit of insulated copper wire at the end too, so I'll get back to it. I don't need to film the tedious undoing of screws. You can imagine that, I'm sure. But it should start to come apart pretty quickly. We'll check in another half hour. Well, I was almost right. Another half an hour, and it's just about finished. I think that side can just about lift out now. More electric motors, got lots of motors, and there was a solenoid, a 240 volt solenoid, so that'll be a saleable item. Sorry about the sun coming through the trees here. There are a few bits of stuff that'll just go in the dirty shred, not a lot, and that lens, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. And this this electric motor, or it drives a fan. I don't think it's really worth the effort to sell it as a fan. However, the motor does have a reduction gearbox on the side of it as well, so we might see if we can get that one off too. Anyway, not long to go now, and we'll do a bit of a tally up with all our parts. Certainly not a lot of scrap value. All the weight, it appears, was in these cross shafts. They're all solid. These aren't hollow bits of pipe, these are all solid, and they weigh quite a lot. Now they might be a stainless steel, but they're magnetic, so they're not going to be worth a great deal for scrap. But I'll probably sell them with all the bushes, bronze bushes and steel gears and sprockets and things. So that'll make a saleable lot, but really there's not much value for scrap here, not even much wire. There is a power supply in this end and a large relay, but electronic wise, very, very little. There's really no circuit boards to speak of, so I'm not sure when this would date to. Probably the 80s maybe. Certainly there was a little board here, I presume it's a rectifier or something. Those parts look like they're, or maybe even late 70s. So no value really e-waste wise. A little bit of scrap metal value, but there's quite a lot of value for parts and reusable bits and pieces. But we'll tidy it all up, and we'll get back to our notepad. So the copy is all finished, all scrapped out, and I'm going to go through them now from a scrapper's perspective. We'll go through and weigh each group and see if we've increased our value by very much. I can tell you that it took almost 2 hours in total to dismantle this copier. So let's go for the scrapper's price, and we've got around about 2 hours labour, and we're going to start with the clean steel. So I'm going to have to do this in stages because the casing is very heavy, and also I'll include these shafts in this clean steel price. So we're just over 5 kilos with the first lot. I'll weigh up all the rest and we'll put a total down. And I'll also include all these sprockets and chains and even the hardware, because if you weren't into salvaging parts like myself, you would put all that in the clean steel. Okay, so that adds up to 17 kilos of clean steel, and we're going to work on 20 cents a kilo for that. Is going to give us $1.70, $3.40. So a little bit more than what the whole thing was worth for dirty shred. We've got $3.40 worth of clean steel. Now there is a little bit of dirty steel, which I'm not even going to weigh. Just a couple of the shafts that were rubber coated or had rollers on them, and the power supply, you'd probably throw that into dirty shred because there's not really anything in there to worry about pulling apart. So that's only going to amount to a few cents. So we can say then the steel component has increased a little bit. Now we'll weigh up some of the other bits. Here's all the electric motors. Some of them had reduction gearboxes, remember, but they'd still all go as electric motors. The solenoid, even the relay, you could probably get away with throwing it in electric motors. So that all weighs up at almost 4 kilos. So motors, 4 kilos. I'm going to work on 50 cents a kilo there. It's a lot better at the moment with the current price of copper being very high, but these are nice round figures to work on. So there's $2. Now we've got a bit of wire. There wasn't a lot of wire in this, but the mains cord was quite heavy. About 350 grams from the look of that. Now insulated wire is up around $3 a kilo here at the moment. But so we've got about 1/3 of a kilo. Yeah, we'll go 1/3. We'll go $3. Oops, that's supposed to say 1/3, which is $1. Keeps us in round figures. Now I've grouped our aluminium together here. We have some good extruded, we have a bit of sheet aluminium, and the housing underneath is cast aluminium. But for the sake of doing calculations, we'll group it all together and we'll work on $1 a kilo. So aluminium, and we weigh, what do we weigh? 2 kilos at $1 is a further $2. Now I have a little bit of stainless steel. Now this is all non-magnetic stainless steel. I've recently done a video on stainless steel, and all my magnetic stuff now just goes with my normal clean steel. It's just not worth separating. But the non-magnetic is 1 kilo of that, but use the right end of the pin. Stainless steel, we had 1 kilo at $1 is $1. What have we got left? We've got a little bit of brass and all the bronze bushes. We'll weigh that as brass. So our brass and bronze there, and these pieces look like they're possibly even copper. They're not quite the pink copper. I think they're some sort of alloy. They're very hard, they don't bend easily, but they certainly look coppery brass to file them. They're non-magnetic, so I'm sure they'll go as brass. And it looks like we got about 200 grams there, 1/5 of a kilo, and brass is paying around about a bit over $5 a kilo. Excellent prices again. So if we add brass at 200 grams or 1/5 kilo at $5 is another $1. So we're rounding all these figures down, but it just makes for easy maths, and you can certainly adjust the prices where you are to get a rough idea. So that's all our scrap. All we had left was a little tub of connectors and things. I cut off the wiring looms. These are mostly brass, but they've got contamination. You could throw them in dirty brass. the plugs I don't think can go into it either, or else there's too much plastic in there, but some people pull the pins out of them. I'm not going to allow anything for that, but I'm certainly not going to put it in the bin. It could go to the e-waste bins out at the transfer station if I need to. We have a small pile of plastic here, just some little bits and pieces and the outer casings, so not very much plastic. So that's all we've got, other than some pieces over here that are really no value to scrappers. But I do have jars of this sort of hardware in the shop and can get a few bucks. So we'll get a total in this, and then we'll move on to the final option, where I do sell a lot of these other bits for better than scrap value. But as far as scrappers are concerned, this is pretty much it. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, $10.40. So let's say $10. So would a scrapper spend 2 hours making $7? Look, probably not. It was still fun to pull apart though, but on an hourly rate it's not viable. But now we can look at what extra value we can get. Okay, this option, we need a figure for the scrap, and we're going to adjust some of these a little bit because I'm going to take those nice shafts out of the steel, which will drop it back a few kilos. I'll take most of the motors out of that figure because I'm going to sell them as motors. So there'll still be a couple, just these two I'll probably just scrap as motors, but the others I can sell separately. The wire's going to be the same, the aluminium's going to be the same, the stainless steel is going to be the same, and the brass will be about half because I'm taking the bronze bushes back out of that and I'm putting them in with these gears because they fit on some of these shafts. So that'll be about 50 cents, 3.50, 4.50. That's probably going to go down to 50 cents, so $5 and probably $3 there. So our scrap now is going to be about $8. Hopefully you can follow my logic there. Now we're going to add some value. We'll start with all these shafts and sprockets and chains and bronze bushes, and I'm going to put $20 on that lot. I really think a hobbyist would see the value in those. So $20 there for the cogs, chains, or their sprockets actually, shafts, etc. $20. Okay, that takes care of all that. Now this type of hardware, I usually separate the springs. There are some plastic, what do you call those? Sort of grommets. They're spring-loaded things. They're handy for anyone that's making stuff. There's lots of little wire clamps that are handy. I'll just allow $1 for all that. I usually get $5 for a jar full of hardware, and I get $10 for a big jar full of springs, but we'll just allow $1 for the hardware. Certainly much better than scrap value. Now we have this stuff over the side that was no value for scrap, but again I put these little micro switches in a jar. These magnetic latches will be handy for someone. There's a light globe, there's a rocker switch. I don't know what anyone would use this lens for, but it might go in the dollar bin. The mirrors, when I did a big copier a while back, someone did buy all the mirrors and they were into mosaics and they were breaking them up and sticking them onto something. So, and the big sheet of glass at the bottom will be handy for something. So just maybe a couple of dollars there. Bit hard to put a value on that, but at least it's yeah, I'll get some value. So we'll just put sundries there. Now we have those two motors we're going to scrap. We've allowed for those. These motors with the reduction boxes, the right person is going to see really good value in those. I could possibly even get $10 each. They're 240 volt motors. They've got their wiring. They'd be perfectly easy to use for someone that maybe even wanted to make a little rotisserie spit for their barbecue. I've seen them made with bike chains and sprockets, and with these reduction drives they'd turn over really nicely. I'm going to try $10 each on those. The solenoid I'll put $5 on. It's a good, nice clean solenoid. 240 volt again, plenty of wire on it, quite useful. And the relay, I did have a quick search on eBay for these relays. It's an Omron. They're a well-known relay company. Very good quality. You've got to find someone that has a use for it, of course, but I'm going to put $5 on that. So instead of scrap copper bearing electric motors, we're going to have $10, $20, $30 there. And I think I've got a pretty good chance of getting that. So motors, etc., $30. Sometimes we pull these things apart and they're weird voltages. They might be 100 volts AC, which some were in the last copier I did. And they're a bit harder to sell, but a good 240 volt. We're 240 volt mains in Australia, and I'm sure someone will see use in those. Now, what have we got left? Well, there's our brass scrap, there's our plugs and sockets. There's nothing out of the aluminium that we're going to use. So that's about it for our extras. Let's add our total up now. Sorry about all these bird noises in the background, and then there was a train going past before. It seems a particularly noisy day. I suppose next thing the neighbour will start his mower. 32, 33, 53, $61. So $61 for 2 hours work is suddenly quite attractive. So you can see that it's always a good idea to look for alternative uses for things rather than just throwing them in your scrap bins. And I go on all the time about selling this stuff in my shop, and I know that most of you don't have a shop, but this sort of stuff interests a lot of guys. And if you say your wife went to a craft market or something, or a general market, and sold, I don't know, flowers or craft work or something, it might be worth pottering along one day, setting up a little table and just putting some, you know, reduction drive electric motors and odd jars of hardware. And I'll tell you, if I was browsing the market, which I get really sick and bored of going to markets when every second stall is selling trees or cupcakes or craft work, and I would certainly stop at a table like this, and if I saw something I needed for a project, I'd buy it. So worth thinking about. Okay, so I think that's the end of this video. I'm just scanning around, there's nothing else left over. So to my mind then, these copiers are worthwhile pulling apart. I'm probably never going to get another one similar to this, but the vintage ones, at least, they're good solid steel, they're good hardware, they're not plastic cogs, and you do get a fair bit of aluminium and stainless steel involved in them as well, and sometimes you do get good circuit boards. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something out of that. $30 an hour. I know I said to you guys never let me scrap another copier, but if I had another one of these come in, I'd probably do it. Alright, catch you in the next video. Bye.